Have you ever wondered what it would be like to experience a moment so profound that it changes the course of your entire life? What if, in an instant, everything you thought you knew about the world and your purpose was challenged? This is the story of Adriana Blackwood, a woman whose life was rooted in simplicity and fulfillment, living in a quiet suburban town. A devoted high school counselor and a loving wife and mother, Adriana had settled into a comfortable routine, never imagining that a single event would thrust her into an extraordinary spiritual journey. Adriana Blackwood's life was one of simplicity and contentment, a reflection of a typical suburban existence. As a high school counselor in the close-knit community of Minnetonka, Minnesota, she devoted herself to her work and family, finding joy in the everyday moments of life. Yet, her ordinary world was about to be completely upended by an event that would not only change her life, but also bring her face to face with a profound revelation that would challenge everything she knew about faith, purpose, and the world around her. What began as a regular day, filled with the usual routines and the warmth of a loving family, became the backdrop for a life-altering accident. In an instant, Adriana found herself thrust into a near-death experience where she was drawn toward an overwhelming light and encountered a divine presence, Jesus Christ. Through this encounter, Adriana was shown a glimpse of the future, revealing a world on the brink of chaos and a global deception that would test the faith of millions. This is the story of Adriana Blackwood, a woman who, after a near-death experience, was given an urgent message, a warning about the coming trials, the rise of the Antichrist, and the importance of spiritual preparedness in the face of a rapidly changing world. Join us as we journey through her remarkable transformation and explore the life-changing encounter that reshaped her understanding of what it means to truly live. Have you ever found yourself living a peaceful, content life, thinking that everything would stay the same forever? That's how Adriana Blackwood's life seemed. Unremarkable, yet fulfilling. At 52, she was settled in the rhythms of suburban life in the tranquil town of Minnetonka, Minnesota. As a high school counselor, Adriana dedicated herself to guiding her students through the challenges of their teenage years. She found joy in being a trusted confidant for many, helping them navigate difficult home lives and the pressures of school. Her role, though emotionally demanding, gave her a deep sense of fulfillment, knowing that she was making a difference in the lives of young people. But what about her life at home? How did the stability of her work life compare to the warmth of her family life? At home, Adriana was surrounded by her husband, Mark, and their two teenage children, Emily and Jason. Together, they shared a strong family bond, with dinners, church services, and family game nights as the foundation of their close-knit dynamic. Though Adriana didn't consider herself religious in the strictest sense, she found comfort in the spiritual traditions of her family, attending church and practicing prayer. Her belief in a higher power and her commitment to treating others with kindness were what grounded her life. Adriana's life, at least on the surface, was comfortable and predictable. She had found security in the routine of work, family, and community. Yet, how could she have known that her world was about to be turned upside down? In just a matter of minutes, everything she thought she knew about herself, her purpose, and the world around her would be shattered by an event so powerful it would take her to the edge of life and death. Would she be ready for what was coming? Would any of us? Have you ever had a day that seemed completely ordinary, only for it to suddenly turn into something unrecognizable. Adriana Blackwood's day had started like any other. Clear skies, the scent of blooming flowers in the air, and a quiet satisfaction after helping a student at school. She had already envisioned the simple pleasures awaiting her that evening: dinner, a chat with her husband Mark, and time spent with their 2 children. It was the kind of day that seemed peaceful, unremarkable, and routine. But little did she know, this was the calm before a storm that would change everything. What could have happened to shatter such a peaceful moment? As Adriana drove down the familiar streets of her neighborhood, the world seemed perfect, until the moment it wasn't. A speeding delivery truck ran a red light, and in an instant, everything she knew was thrown into chaos. How could something so tragic unfold so quickly, changing her life forever? In those fleeting moments after the crash, how did Adriana perceive the world around her? What happened when she found herself floating above the wreckage, no longer in her body, watching as paramedics rushed to save her? Detached from the scene, Adriana observed the frantic efforts below her with an eerie calm. How could she be so peaceful, so unaffected by the panic unfolding beneath her? Was this the beginning of something beyond her understanding, something much larger than the accident itself? What could be more powerful than a force that gently pulls you towards something beyond understanding? As Adriana floated above the wreckage, still detached from her body, she began to feel something calling her forward, an irresistible presence, both magnetic and comforting. What was this light that seemed to radiate peace, wisdom, and love as though it knew her deepest thoughts? How could something so serene replace the chaos around her? And what would it mean to move closer to it? As the paramedics continued their desperate attempts to revive her, Adriana felt herself being gently drawn towards something. It wasn't a forceful pull, but a soft, magnetic presence that seemed to beckon her forward. She could feel a warmth surrounding her, a welcoming embrace that filled her with a profound sense of peace. This light was not harsh or blinding, but rather soothing, alive with a vibrant energy that pulsed in rhythm with love and wisdom. It was as though the light itself was sentient, full of intelligence, and radiating an understanding that went beyond anything Adriana had ever known. The closer she moved toward the light, the more everything around her seemed to fade. It was as if the world was slowly losing its grip on her, as if the very fabric of reality was slipping away. The sounds of the paramedics, the beeping machines, and the frantic efforts to save her were replaced by a gentle quietude, a profound stillness that seemed to envelop her completely. It was as though she was being pulled into the heart of the light, into a realm beyond physical existence. Amidst this overwhelming sense of peace and love, a figure began to materialize before her. At first, Adriana could barely make out the details, but as the figure grew clearer, she realized that it was Jesus Christ. However, this was not the Jesus she had seen depicted in paintings or church images. This was not a figure confined to a frame or a mere image on a page. No, this Jesus radiated with such brilliance, such intensity of love, that it overwhelmed her senses. His presence filled the space, and it seemed to transcend time and space itself. His eyes were the most striking feature. They held a depth that was beyond comprehension, eyes that seemed to carry the weight of eternity, filled with an infinite wisdom and understanding. When he looked at her, it was as if he knew everything about her, every thought, every emotion, every joy, and every mistake. And yet, in his gaze, There was no judgment, only a deep, unconditional love. It was the love of a father who knew her intimately and accepted her completely. Adriana. He spoke her name, and the sound of his voice reverberated not just through her ears, but through her very soul. His voice was not just heard, but felt, deep within, as though the words penetrated every fiber of her being. What you are about to witness must be shared with others. The time is shorter than many realize, and my people need to understand what is coming. The weight of his words hit her with the force of a revelation. In that moment, Adriana felt a tremendous sense of urgency, a divine calling, one that transcended anything she had ever experienced. She knew, deep within her, that she had been chosen to carry a message, not just for herself, but for the entire world. This wasn't just a personal revelation. It was a responsibility she was being entrusted with. What could be more overwhelming than the feeling of being guided through a realm of pure light, where every step fills you with an indescribable sense of vitality and awakening? As Jesus gently took Adriana's hand and led her through the radiant veil, what awaited her on the other side? Could she ever have imagined what she would witness there? Visions unfolding before her eyes, each one more urgent and revealing than the last. In that vast and peaceful amphitheater, what did the visions show her about the future? How would the world change, and what role would she play in the divine warning that Jesus was revealing to her? Could these images of destruction and chaos be the key to understanding the deception that was soon to spread across the world? What was the great deception that would test the faith of millions, and how would it unfold before Adriana's very eyes? With a gentle and knowing touch, Jesus reached out and took Adriana's hand. As he did, she felt a surge of energy, a vitality unlike anything she had ever known. He led her through a veil of pure, radiant light. Stepping through the veil was like walking through a living waterfall, an energy that flowed around her, saturating her being. As she passed through it, a sense of fullness filled her. She felt more alive, more awake than she had ever been. Every part of her existence, every fiber of her being, seemed to resonate with the light. On the other side of the veil, Adriana found herself standing in an expansive, radiant amphitheater of light. The space was vast, yet somehow intimate, and it was filled with an overwhelming sense of peace. The air itself seemed to hum with energy. Before her, visions began to unfold, scenes playing out like a living tapestry, unfolding in real time. These weren't distant events or vague dreams. They were vivid, real, and immediate. "Watch carefully," Jesus said, his voice filled with both authority and compassion. "I will show you the great deception that is coming, how it begins, how it spreads, and how it will attempt to ensnare even my most devoted followers." The first vision Adriana witnessed was one of utter chaos. She saw the world ravaged by natural disasters of unimaginable magnitude. Earthquakes shook the ground, floods submerged entire cities, and violent storms tore through landscapes. Adriana watched as cities crumbled to dust, ecosystems were shattered, and people, ordinary men and women, were caught in the whirlwind of destruction. Desperate cries filled the air as families lost everything, and the very earth seemed to cry out in pain. As Jesus spoke, his words clarified the meaning of these visions. "These calamities are only the beginning," he explained. "They will set the stage for the rise of the Antichrist. People will be desperate for someone to restore order in the midst of the chaos." Adriana's vision continued as she watched the world crumble in chaos. Stock markets crashed, digital banking systems failed, and currencies became worthless in an instant. The wealthiest were reduced to poverty, and the middle class disappeared almost overnight. Riots erupted across cities, and governments fell apart. It was a global collapse of unimaginable proportions. "This is no accident," Jesus said, his voice thick with sorrow. "These events are orchestrated. They are deliberate actions, manipulated like pieces on a cosmic chessboard." Amid this chaos, a leader emerged, a man with a magnetic presence who captured the world's attention. At first, he was an unknown political figure, but his rise to power was swift. His words spoke of hope, peace, and unity in the face of disaster. But Jesus warned Adriana, "Pay attention to his words. Notice how he speaks partial truths, just enough to lead people astray. His lies will be subtle, and many will fall for them." As Adriana continued to watch, she saw this man, the Antichrist, addressing the United Nations. He spoke of peace, progress, and prosperity, quoting sacred texts from the Bible, the Quran, and the Bhagavad Gita. His message seemed to embrace all faiths, yet as Jesus revealed, this was part of the deception. He twisted these scriptures just enough to lead people away from the truth. His ultimate goal was to unite the world under his control, no matter the cost. Soon after, the Global Harmony Initiative was introduced, promising groundbreaking technologies to solve humanity's problems: water purification, food production, and sustainable energy. These advancements seemed miraculous at first, but Jesus exposed the dark side of these innovations. They were designed to control every aspect of human life. A new global economic system followed, with digital currencies and a cashless society. This system promised fairness, but in reality, it would track every person's movements and actions, with a social credit system determining access to necessities. Those who resisted would be persecuted. Adriana's vision unfolded further as she saw how the Antichrist would manipulate religion. He would unite all faiths under one false belief system. He would rebuild the temple in Jerusalem, not for true worship, but to accommodate every form of worship, presenting a facade of unity. This would be the ultimate deception, convincing people that the Antichrist was fulfilling divine prophecy. Resistance to the New World Order would be met with increasing isolation and persecution. Families would turn against one another. Friendships would be broken, and communities would fracture. Those who stood firm in the truth would be vilified, while those who embraced the new system would be led to believe they were working towards a brighter future, one of false peace and prosperity. Yet, in the midst of this darkness, Adriana saw a glimmer of hope. Small, resilient communities of true believers would rise. These individuals, who had not fallen for the Antichrist's lies, stood firm in their faith. They drew strength from God's Spirit within them, finding courage even as the world around them descended into chaos. "These are my faithful ones," Jesus said. "Their strength does not come from their own power, but from my Spirit within them. They stand firm because they know who they are in me." Before Adriana could process everything she had just witnessed, she felt a sudden and inexplicable pull, as if something was drawing her back. It wasn't harsh or abrupt, but a gentle, almost comforting force, guiding her away from the radiant light and back to the world she had just left. In her mind, the last words of Jesus reverberated with a profound urgency. "The time to prepare is now. Don't prepare by stockpiling food or earthly resources. Instead, Prepare by building a relationship with me. Learn to know my voice and hide my word in your heart. His voice, full of love and authority, seemed to imprint these words deep within her soul. Suddenly, Adriana gasped for air, her lungs filling with the cool, sterile air of the hospital room. The rush of sensation was overwhelming. She was back in her body. The chaos and brilliance of the light, the divine presence, and the peace she had just experienced vanished in an instant, replaced by the harsh reality of the clinical environment. She blinked her eyes open and saw the shocked faces of doctors and nurses crowded around her, their eyes wide with disbelief. They had been desperately trying to revive her. She had been clinically dead for over 4 minutes, and yet here she was, alive again. The medical staff exchanged confused glances, unable to explain how she had returned to life. The monitors beeped steadily, and the room was filled with the sounds of frantic medical activity. But in that moment, Adriana knew deep in her heart that her revival wasn't a coincidence. She had been brought back for a divine purpose, one that was now clearer than ever. It was as if the very purpose of her life had shifted, and she felt a weight of responsibility settle upon her. She had been chosen to share something, a message that the world urgently needed to hear. In the days that followed, Adriana found herself overwhelmed by a sense of urgency. She couldn't shake the images of the vision she had experienced, and she knew that the world was rapidly heading toward the crisis she had witnessed. The signs of the Antichrist's rise were becoming more evident with each passing day. Digital currencies were being pushed forward. Surveillance technologies were advancing at an alarming rate, and interfaith movements were beginning to unite disparate religious groups under the banner of false peace. It was all falling into place, just as she had seen. The deception was drawing closer, and Adriana could feel the weight of it pressing in on every aspect of the world around her. Yet, despite the urgency and darkness of what she had witnessed, there was still hope. The message she carried was clear. There was still time for the faithful to prepare. The time was not one of material preparation, stockpiling food, gathering weapons, or hoarding earthly resources, but a time to prepare spiritually. The preparation was one of the heart. It was about cultivating a deep, personal relationship with Christ, learning to recognize His voice in the noise of the world, and hiding His word in one's heart so that it became an unshakable foundation when the deception came. Adriana knew that the deception the world was about to face would be more convincing than anything humanity had ever encountered. It would be so subtle, so all-encompassing, that even the most devout followers of Christ could be swept away by it if they were not vigilant. The lies of the Antichrist would be woven into the fabric of everyday life, making it almost impossible for people to discern the truth without the guidance of the Holy Spirit. Many would fall for the lies, believing them to be a path to peace and unity. But for those who truly knew Christ, there was hope. Hope that would guide them through the darkness and lead them to the truth, no matter how convincing the deception seemed. Adriana's heart burned with the need to share this message. Time was running out, and the world needed to wake up. The faithful must prepare spiritually, for only those who were grounded in their relationship with Christ would stand firm when the lies and chaos took hold. It was a matter of eternal importance. The message had to be shared. And Adriana knew that her journey had only just begun. She had been brought back not just to live, but to speak. to awaken others to the truth and to help them prepare before it was too late. Time is short. The world is heading toward a day of reckoning. Adriana knows her mission has just begun. She has been chosen to share this urgent message and awaken the faithful before it's too late. If you have any comments about Adriana's message, please share them with us. Thank you for your listening